Ireland is commonly referred to as the Emerald Isle, the Green Island. The description seems fitting. It has extensive stretches of forests, meadows and fields, so in the literal sense it is very green. Considering the environment, however, one particular Irish cultural practice is anything but green: the cutting and burning of peat or turf. For more than 1,000 years, peatland has been dug up and utilised as a source of heating in Ireland. Until about 100 years ago, it was solely hand-cut. But since then, technological development has enabled large-scale turf extraction. The Irish state has been heavily involved in this process. It has continuously encouraged expansion of turf production, and not just for heating fuel, but also for peat-fired electricity stations. Seems like a good idea. After all, peat is a natural resource, readily available in many parts of Ireland, and for private supply, all you need is a peat spade. That makes it a very cheap fuel. But what is peat? It is found in acidic boglands. The acidic conditions result in trees and plant matter not being able to break down properly, and this half-decayed vegetation is what eventually turns into peat. This process, however, takes millions of years, so the peat we dig up is not replaced. It doesn't regenerate. Instead, we leave a dent in the landscape every time a layer of peat is removed. Consequently, areas with bogland in Ireland are typically scarred by square hollows randomly placed and of varying depths. But there's a much worse issue. Peat is a fossil fuel, which means that it holds CO2, and vast amounts of it. Healthy bogland can absorb 10 times more CO2 from the atmosphere than, for example, forests. But when disturbed, it releases these huge amounts back into the atmosphere. Cutting and burning peat or turf therefore cause much higher CO2 emission than any other fuel, including coal and oil. Both the EU and the Irish government have in recent years introduced restrictions on turf production. And yet, every summer in rural areas with bogland, locals can be seen exercising and preserving the age-old cultural practice of cutting peat for fuel. It is a recurring activity, year in, year out, and often one that is carried out by family members across generations. It is part of the history and identity of many local communities. But does that validate its continuation? Green no longer just refers to colour. It also describes an attitude and approach to environmental issues. And the question is therefore whether, with continued turf production, Ireland can rightfully call itself the Emerald Isle, the Green Island. What do you think?